Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 10 of the anime series, Everything Becomes F, the Perfect Insider. And I just don't care. I don't care. I just don't care. The series has been overwhelmingly testing my patience, has been very cold and impersonal. They, started to have finally 3 episodes ago this characterization coming to the fore, something that could attract me as a viewer with the relationship dynamic unfolding between Nishina Sono and Saikawa. And then they backpedaled, and all of this series, it could have been half the length. Could have been a movie, could have been an OVA, did not have to be 11 episodes. That just goes to show you. Everything is revealed in this episode. Episode 10. We still have an entire episode to go. Unless the chief amount of that episode is going to be finding Magata Miki, who never existed, and arresting the bitch. Like, bringing some sense of closure, either putting a bullet in her head or actually putting handcuffs on her and taking her ass away to jail. It's going to be another full episode of wasted time. Maybe they'll get back to that characterization between Saikawa and Nishina Sono. Maybe they'll actually become a couple. Maybe they'll playfully, just start discussing, sort of sugar dispensers and the high sort of, calculable equivalents of how many grams of sugar can fit in such a dispenser. It's trying to make this all seem so built up and fluffed up and intellectual. And if you had cut out all of that impersonal crap, all of this time-wasting stuff, you actually had the makings of a story that could be personally investing, that could engage me, that could make me care about what is going on. Not even because so much of how this was all revealed, once the revelations are made, a lot of it is conforming to my speculations and some of my earliest ones. I mean, it was an evolving thing. At least I'll give them this for the, procedure of this series. At least time and time again after every episode, I would, come at it with different speculations, but a lot of that was just, looking at it at face value, and it was a very simplistic, at face value setup. Among the speculations I would put forth ones that I was kind of hoping would maybe come true, because they were ones that were so outlandish and so against type for what was the most predictable aspects and outcome of the story, that I thought they'd never do it. But it would be something amidst all of this just jargon-befilled mindlessness that I cared not one iota about. It would be something, throw a wrench in the works, a twist in the works. The idea that Nishina Sono might be the daughter of Magata Shiki, and this was a product of her mind. Right there, you have something much more psychological, much more of a thriller framework. Imagine if that was the reveal in this episode, when Saikawa and Nishina Sono are talking to the guys, this computerized, holographic, whatever you want to call it, virtual reality guys of Magata Shiki, looking younger. Imagine if they pulled back and we suddenly found Saikawa sitting across from Nishina Sono, and this is all a product of multiple personalities within her mind. Maybe there weren't even any murders. Maybe it was something completely on the mindscape of Nishina Sono, who was a troubled girl who created a whole fiction, multiple fictions of all these different personalities out of the loss of her own family. And Saikawa might have been the psychologist or a caregiver, somebody to take care of her, trying to bring her out of it and engage her. Imagine how much more creative and fascinating that would have been. Instead, we have a very bare bones, utmost predictable sort of story here, and they kept just pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off and adding all this substanceless story. I can't even call it a story. It was like, like, let me tell you a story. Let me find a storybook, and I'm going to cut half of it out. I'm just going to make the through line from point A to point B, beginning to end, the bulk of the story. But then I'm going to take a phone book, and I'm going to mesh half of that phone book with half of that story. And so half the time, I'm going to be listing off names and addresses and whatever, just boring, mundane information you really have no concern over, you really could care less about. And I'm going to have it amount to nothing. So that when we get to the end of, the story, there's going to be no impact. There was no impact. None at all. They try to play this whole aspect of, okay, we're talking to, Magata Shiki's daughter. And I'm like, it's not her daughter. I already said last episode. I mean, the body, the corpse, they haven't even, tested this thing yet for age and everything like that. You can pretty much, there are scientific tests. You can tell the age of a corpse. We don't have that information, so obviously they're hiding it for a reason. It's the daughter. She looked younger, yada yada. Magata Miki looked older, even though she was supposed to be the younger sister, air quotes. Nobody knew she had a sister. They said it from the beginning. So, I mean, all of these things were easily predictable. It was just a matter of taking the long way around, a complete befuddled directive turn to lead you to the easiest equation, the easiest and most simplistic answer by the end. Not once throughout the course of this series have I been emotionally invested. At this point, as someone was saying in the comments of my previous episode discussion video, where I rambled on for almost 20 full minutes, they said basically what I felt. I'm forcing myself to get through this crap because I just want to see if I have it pegged right. And my fear with this episode has come true. They kind of try to throw in a misdirection to seem clever. Oh, it's Magata Shiki's daughter, and she was brought up, 15. Everything becomes 15, blah, blah, blah. And yet, one of my earliest things was everything becomes free. I said that's what I believed everything becomes F to be in meaning. The essence of it. And what did they talk about for the last half of the episode? Well, the real Magata Shiki, who we found out this happens to be, she killed her daughter, faked, that was the one maybe little hint that I can give them credit for. There was no Magata Miki. It was a completely, false identity. At least she didn't kill someone else and steal that identity. But who cares? I don't. It's like, okay, I was right for the most part. I don't care. But I mean, with that reveal, they tried to throw it in there like, oh, it's a twist. There was a daughter involved, all this crap. Like, I think the only thing closely approaching any sort of characterization that drew me in, that had me invested, had me interested, was literally the final shot of the episode. When we see this woman, for all intents and purposes, a fictional identity, Magata Miki, the, real flesh and blood Shiki, making her escape when the uncles showed up, when she kills him. And we see that after all this time, she actually still loved him. And he knew exactly what she was going to do, and he put up no, he was her puppet. But what does she get out of the equation? Everything becomes free. She became free. She found freedom within the holographic virtual reality environment. So much of the discussion talked about becoming free, that we are free of our bodily vessel. We are free in spirit within this VR environment. And it was spelling out the grander picture. All of that, everything becomes 15. It was all misdirection. That was the original plan, but they didn't follow through with it, and I don't give a shit. Pardon my French. And you gotta understand, like, I have no stake in ripping this series apart. I was very intrigued by it going into it. the first few episodes, like, it really took a lot of wasted time before it got going. Then when it finally did get going, when that body first rolls out, it's like, all right, well, maybe this will be interesting. And then that through line, as I say, they cropped out so much what I can only assume is in the novel to be the equivalent of great characterization, personality in the characters represented in the story. Cut so much of that out, have so many pointless scenes with so much pointless dialogue that really goes nowhere, adds nothing beneficial to the environment or the characters contained within it. And they expect me to give an F when they finally reveal things that I've been predicting so early on in the course of the series. Am I the only one? Am I the only one left thinking that the drama or the novel this is based on must be better? I mean, intellectual fiction can be just as impactful as, I wouldn't say, non-intellectual fiction, but I mean, the comparison of all the techno jargon and, mathematical jargon, all of that stuff can be contained in a story and be very engaging. One of my all-time favorite stories comes from the Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes pantheon, if you will, the canon, The Dancing Men, where Sherlock Holmes has to figure out a mystery that leads to a murder and a suicide attempt. And there's a lot of discussion from an analytical point of view of alphanumerical equations in the depictions of these little glyph dancing men figures. These are all messages to be, a cipher to be cracked. That was interesting. This isn't. Because at least with that story, there was an emotional equivalent. You felt for the woman in that story who was being plagued by these messages and her back history that it all, was born out of. I don't care about Saikawa. I don't care about Nishina Sono. I was starting to, and then they dialed back from the reasons I was. I can't believe there's a whole final episode yet to come. Like, is this going to be an entire episode of just watching them leaving the island and going back to the status quo, which was uninteresting to begin with? Should I care? Because I don't. Feel free to tell me what you thought of this episode, to tell me what you thought of the series overall. Feel free to disagree with me if you thought it was pure ecstasy, if you were wowed by it, if you didn't see any of it coming and it completely flabbergasted and sidewinded you. Feel free to hit that dislike button as many frickin' times as you can, through multiple accounts if you have them. If you think I'm just ripping into this unfairly. Because the basis of any good story is engagement. Is drawing you into the environment, drawing you into the personalities of the characters through some sense of connectivity. You don't have to connect with every character, but there has to be some level of connectivity, of relatability. And everyone in this series has been so cold and impersonal, to use that terminology again, that I just don't care. If you're going to at least unabashedly praise this, at least give reasonings as to why. Be objective. I mean, that's what I'm being here. I'm being objective as possible. From what I understand, it seems people really love this, the source material for this, which is like a line of novels. And if those novels were structured anything even relating to the way this anime was, how is that possible? Is what I would be asking. How is it possible it would have any fans? So I have to assume the print form of this must be more engaging, must be more enticing and curious. It has to be by fathoms, by leaps and bounds, because this was utter crap. I would love to get my hands on computer software, download the entirety of this series, and give it a streamline edit, taking out all of the time-wasting factors and putting what little of there is, the really relatable character portraits, those character moments, few and far between though they may be. And I would love to see what the length of this series would really be. Probably be like movie length, maybe 2-episode OVA in almost movie length. So much of it was unnecessary, and so much of it has led me to the point where, even eschewing the predictability of the outcome, even if I give them credit for misdirecting us even at this final stage in the game, that the daughter was the one who was supposed to be the killer, but Nishina Sono prompted something else to happen. Even if I give that credit, and sure to my speculation, Magatashiki took on the identity of her air quotes sister, who, again, the only bomb drop in this episode that really mattered one iota was the fact that this was somebody who was non-existent. She did an Andy Dufresne and created someone, you know, a complete fictional identity to inhabit. Other than that final scene, as I say, where you see that Shiki still loved her uncle, and he was resigned to the plan she had set in motion and had escaped. None of the rest of this do I care about. And I can't wait to come on in a week's time after the next friggin' episode, because what can they possibly do to try to, like, you know, end this series? Now, with this, like I said, short of them going after Shiki and taking her down, catching up to her, finding out she killed herself, whatever it is, I'm going to be utterly shocked and baffled and befuddled like they, you know, like everyone was promising me I would be through the course of this series. If there's anything I give even one crap about in this final episode up and coming. So yeah, let me know what you thought of it. Feel free to bash that dislike button if you feel like I'm being too hardcore on it. But I have no stake in bashing it. I have no stake in applauding it. I just want to watch good anime. And so much more of the series that have been running concurrently to this are that much better. So much more pathos and relatable characterization and depth of story in so many of these other series. It's a shame. It's really a shame. So yeah, that'll be it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. I'll catch you later. Peace.